or it can feel very disempowering when you don't know what action to take. So we're trying to sort of give people opportunities to know what to do and to find simple ways to make a difference. So yeah, we've got loads and loads of people signed up already. We're going to head into our next year with the Brit Awards again and festivals throughout 2025. So the movement's going to keep growing. This month, our climate action challenge is to sign an open letter to protect the Sargasso Sea. I'm not going to talk too much about it because that's going to be the topic of conversation, but it's a really, really important campaign. The seas are obviously vital to the health of our planet. And yeah, I'm going to hand over to Ella, who's going to introduce our fantastic guest tonight. So thanks, everyone.
Hi, I'm Ella. I also work at Music Declares Emergency. I'm really, really pleased to introduce our two speakers tonight. Dan Smith is a double Grammy-nominated and Brit Award-winning singer, songwriter, composer, and record producer. He is the creative force and lead singer of the British band Bastille, who have 3 acclaimed UK #1 albums. They've sold over 11 million records worldwide, had billions of streams and video views, and over 25 million monthly listeners on Spotify. Dan composes songs for many artists and writes music for film and TV. He worked with Hans Zimmer on the score for the BBC's recent Planet Earth 3, as well as a reimagined version of the Bastille hit Pompeii that was used in the global promotion of the series. Dan's most recent project, Bastille Presents Ampersand, a collection of story songs, was released last Friday, October 25th. So happy launch to Dan. And Dominique Palmer is a climate justice activist, writer, and political science and international relations graduate. She's a founding member and steering committee member of the Youth Climate Justice Fund and a member of Climate Live. She advocates for intersectional, inclusive climate action, slow fashion, and creative climate communication. So yeah, we're so pleased to have both of them on this call today. So yeah, I'm going to pass you now over to Dominique and Dan. Please feel free to ask any Qs in the webinar Q&A.
Thank you, Ella. Thank you, Faye, for the intro.
Thanks, Ella. Thanks, Faye.
Hi, everyone.
Hello. Dominique, how did you find hearing that introduction about yourself?
I've heard many introductions now. I just kind of I tune out introductions a little bit. It always feels weird.
yeah, it is a bit weird. But thank you very much, Ella. How are you doing tonight, Dominique?
Doing good. Yeah, it's I'm really looking forward to hearing all about your trip, and it's also really cool just looking at all of the different movement members and where you're all coming in from as well. And that's been really, really cool. Very global audience right now.
Yeah,
and I love that you're wearing your No Music on a Dead Planet shirt.
Represent, right?
I
was yes, definitely wasn't scrabbling around to find it at all.
I have not got mine on now, but in spirit it is on. Thank you so much for chatting with us. We're gonna get chatting about your trip at Sargasso Sea and how all of us can protect our oceans. And I also love how you're using the power of music and combining that with activism. As a music lover myself, I think it's really cool and really beautiful to see this come together. So just to start us off, can you take us back to the first moments actually arriving at the Sargasso Sea? And what were your initial thoughts and feelings when you saw that for the first time?
Yeah, good question. And I apologize in advance for how horribly inarticulate I am. But so my answers are going to be absolute like waffle and drivel. But
I'm sure not.
So yeah, it was really amazing trip. I was invited to go and I guess like live on the Arctic Sunrise, one of the Greenpeace boats. We went from Bermuda and got on the boat and kind of sailed straight out for 24 plus hours to go sort of right to the middle of the Sargasso Sea and essentially into the middle of the Bermuda Triangle. I've never really been in the deep ocean before, and it was, I mean, I think we were lucky with the weather. it was just insanely beautiful. I think
Mm.
I've never been surrounded by just water that is that blue, obviously just reaching every point of the horizon as you'd expect. Yeah, it was really really sort of peaceful and really, really beautiful. And I didn't really know what to expect. But also, as well as the kind of, in terms of an experience, like a sort of life experience for me, I'd never lived on a boat before. I spent a lot of my life living on a tour bus, and there are definitely similarities. But yeah, getting to sort of, it was just a really amazing experience, kind of learning about not only the ocean a bit more, learning about the campaign that Greenpeace are running and have been running for such a long time, and yeah, and I guess learning about the sort of the local community, and what the sort of like climate activist movements on Bermuda, and in that area, and yeah, and also learning loads about Greenpeace as an organization. There's no better way to get to know people than living in a bunk alongside them. And like every morning on the boat, the first hour when you wake up is like cleaning. Oh, sorry, I'm talking too fast. The experience of being on the boat was amazing. In the morning, you would clean. Everyone sort of gets together and is like mopping the floors or cleaning the toilets, or helping in the kitchen. And so yeah, just got to know so many people, so many campaigners and volunteers and kind of organizers from all over the world. There were people from about 20 countries as part of the crew, as well as the British, a big chunk of the British team from the Greenpeace Oceans team who were there for that specific campaign. So, as someone who, like many people in the world, I think, want to feel kind of useful and proactive when it comes to the climate crisis. I think it was just amazing to get to speak to and learn from people who live and breathe it every day and have dedicated their lives to it. It was really, really humbling and really interesting.
It sounds like a really beautiful and meaningful experience, and a great way to get close to people and learn from people, bonding like that on a boat as well, from a tour bus to a boat. I myself am actually quite scared of the sea, despite being an ocean activist. So I truly admire it.
Have you ever been sort of out into the deep sea?
I haven't, but I have potentially a sailing trip to COP30. So we'll see.
That'd be awesome.
And-
Yeah, I mean, nothing in my life had ever taken me right out into the sea before, and it was so interesting. There's so much to do with the seas. Obviously, unless you have a job or a life that takes you out to sea, like there's no reason why you would have ever spent any time in the ocean unless you live somewhere coastal, and particularly out on a boat in the deep seas. So I felt very, very lucky and privileged to have the experience of being able to go there. But also, I guess because it's not a part of that many people's daily lives, you don't think about how much of the earth is obviously underwater and is ocean. So it can be easy to kind of, as with so many things when it comes to the planet and climate, it can be quite easy to sort of just not think about it. So it was it was amazingly educational in that respect.
It sounds really like educational. I know you mentioned that you learned so much as well, like from the activists on board. So why was this like the particular focus, like the expedition to Sargasso Sea? Like, why is this area so important for the Greenpeace campaign?
Yeah, well, the Greenpeace campaign is to do with the deep oceans, and there is a UN ocean treaty that is kind of in place to protect the deep oceans, which it's been agreed upon. Greenpeace have been campaigning for it for a very long time. It's there, it's in place, and I think whilst I want to be an activist and I feel passionately about these things, I also am aware that, like everybody, I'm just a kind of flawed person living in the world in 2024, and I'm mindful of being in a band, of kind of having hypocrisies thrown at me. But I think I had a bunch of conversations going into it that felt like sort of were kind of helpful in making me kind of get over that thinking. I think that's an obstacle that's thrown at so many people, and it kind of paralyzes you, and it can be used to stop people from being able to make the arguments that I think are really necessary. And I think a conversation going into the trip that I found really helpful was the idea of our carbon footprint being a term perpetuated by oil companies to kind of shift the blame onto the individual, to make us feel guilt. And whilst all the things we can do on a small level are massively important and can be helpful, I think it's really important to remember, as we all know, or some of us know, that changes need to happen at a much higher level than any of us individually, which is why when we talk about things that people can do to help, it's about using your voice, it's about petitioning, and this particular campaign by Greenpeace, why it really appealed to me and why I felt like keen to be involved was this international treaty. Sorry for jumping around loads. This international
it's great.
UN Ocean Treaty has been agreed, and it's in place, and it needs 60 countries to ratify it. So it needs 60 countries to bake it into law nationally. So in the UK, for example, that just means like it's ready to go Parliament. You just need to take it through Parliament, and we will be one of those 60 names. And once 60 names have done it, that's protecting the deep oceans. And the deep oceans are our best defense at combating climate change and the climate crisis, which to me felt like such a brilliant, beautiful way of kind of simplifying it. It's quite an achievable ask for people, for me, for anyone. Sign this petition. If the government listen, they can bake this into British law, and if 60 countries do it, that's international law, and that's a real tangible, positive, proactive step. I think all of us just want to feel useful and like we can do achievable things that will make a difference, because there's so much negativity out there, and there's so much kind of gloomy messaging. Not that loads of that isn't true, but I think there's an understandable push for kind of positivity and proactivity, and that's why this felt really appealing. So going there for me, I think, was to learn about the deep oceans, specifically learn about the Sargasso Sea, which is filled with sargassum, which is a seaweed, which is like amazing for the environment. It's sort of called like the lungs of the earth by some people, and it was to, like, whilst I completely agree with Faye and you, I think it's amazing to to use whatever platform we have to talk about things that are important. But I also know that a lot of people only really want to hear artists or people who are known for a certain thing doing like what's expected of them or sticking to their lane, which obviously is rubbish. But I think with this, it felt like I think Greenpeace have done an amazing job in making something huge feel quite achievable by breaking down the steps. I think that can be really helpful to understand.
Yeah, and I love that you also mentioned like how important it is to focus on like the bigger picture as well, rather than like just the individual actions and the kind of system change that we need. And also that you touched on the aspect of hypocrisy claims or whatnot, but the fact is none of us are perfect, and we don't need a few perfect individuals as activists, but like millions of imperfect, ordinary people doing what they can, essentially. So yeah, I really love that. And do you feel like that is, like, from your experience, that's also a role that other like musicians and artists can play in environmental activism?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I think it's complicated when loads of the fundamentals of an industry that you exist in are not necessarily beneficial for the environment. There's a complication in that, but I think everybody, I think it's like 90+% of the British public are concerned about climate change and want to be proactive. And the reason why a lot of people probably aren't doing anything, proactive, might be because of like the sort of paralysis of it seeming like this massive thing that's so sort of beyond the environment of our immediate lives. But obviously this is a thing that affects absolutely everybody. And I think that's why it's really helpful and important to sort of break down the messaging into small everyday things you can do, signing petitions, writing to MPs, like, making a real marked effort to buy and wear secondhand clothes and focus on smaller things like that you can do in your life. Because like we said before, the systems that are huge, massive companies and governments, these are organizations that really can have a huge impact. And so, it's about, I guess, sort of changing where you spend your money and where you bank and the clothes you buy and all those kind of things. But also people don't necessarily want to hear that from musicians or other people. So I think for me, it sort of brings me back to this Greenpeace campaign and why it's a relatively small ask from anyone. But also, I guess, trying to use our platform, like the way I went into this campaign was knowing all of what I just said. I'm not an expert. I don't claim to be an expert. I don't claim to be like, perfect by any means. And that's why I think it's important that I even the stuff I just said, like, probably is a bit too far for what I would normally say, because I feel like I'm not someone that can offer advice. What I could do is direct people towards organizations and campaigns that are doing amazing things, can try and lead by example as best I can. And I think me going into this campaign with Greenpeace, going to the Sargasso Sea, going on their boat, the Arctic Sunrise, the idea for me was like, I'm going in as a like interested idiot who wants to learn more and wants to find out, and then hopefully, the audience of ours that were interested, bring them along with us, bring them along with me. I kind of went there almost imagining I was a journalist, the opportunity to find out about the oceans, about the environment there, about what can be done, to find out like what it is that brought people to volunteer for Greenpeace and want to, live on the boat for months and months and months on end, what it is that they're doing on a daily level, on like a, on a campaign. So it was that really, it was like, I felt like what I could add to this was going in like everybody else with like a desire to be useful, but maybe a lack of knowledge of how to be useful. And I sort of wanted to and continue to just want to learn and then share that with anyone who listened in a way that doesn't feel sort of patronizing or preachy, because I don't think people want to be spoken down to. We've seen what happens when people are feel kind of judged and made to feel like shamed for their actions.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's really a really, really beautiful way that it kind of brought all those different aspects together. And yeah, I think, your voice part of this and ours being part of different campaigns and supporting it just really engages more people. And can also make people feel more empowered to take action, like the small actions that you mentioned. I know a lot of movement members here who are signed up, look out for things that you can get involved in. And you touched on this a bit, Dan, about, how we also need like the hope-fueled advocacy. And one thing I'd also add on to that for people watching is like, think about the kind of Venn diagram of what skills you have, or what would you like to learn? Like, what do you feel needs doing? What are you drawn to? And also what brings you joy, and finding something that kind of fits all of that and finding your role within there. And yeah, just it's all the small actions that add up, like you mentioned. And
That's such a nice way to put it.
I love talking about joy and climate joy. I feel like it fits perfectly with the music aspect of things. Before we go, carry on.
Sorry to talk over you. I think yeah, speaking of the joy of it, I think the sort of the double benefit of getting to go there was, for me, as a kind of experience in life, the absolute privilege of getting to go to the deep oceans, to swim in the deep ocean, to listen to dolphins and sea life on through the sort of sonar stuff, and be part of the kind of Greenpeace experience, and feel like feel remotely in a tiny way proactive, I think was amazing. But yeah, I guess when you speak to when you sort of spoke to the joy of it, I imagine you are referring to like just the beauty and the joy of nature and getting to be part of that, and you know, I guess it's whatever engages and excites people, right?
Whatever brings you joy. No, definitely. I mean, I loved also hearing about the joy that you found actually just, you know, being in the ocean. Was there like a particular moment that you kind of remember or experience or like encounter that you had with wildlife, or just like something that really stood out for you during the trip?
We were lucky enough to see some humpback whales
Wow.
beaching, which was really amazing. And I yeah, right in the middle of the Bermuda Triangle, we went for we had about half an hour off, so I went for a swim in the sea, which was just really amazing. We actually ended up weirdly, we had sort of 5 spare minutes, and we shot a music video, completely unplanned. But there were some really talented and incredible nature photographers who were there to capture loads of, you know, what's happening in the Sargasso Sea. And this guy called Tavish Campbell, who's an amazing sort of underwater filmmaker and also drone operator. So I sort of, in a half-hour gap that we had, I was like, dude, I've got this idea for a video. I've got this song at double speed. If we play it off the boat and I swim out, do you mind just getting a one-shot drone thing for 2 minutes? And he was like, yeah, sure. And so, you know, that wasn't something we'd really thought about or planned before the trip, but it sort of seemed like something that would be achievable in the moment, and we kind of did. And you know, in a break, we had quite long days, as you would imagine, there, kind of getting samples, and we, you know, we recorded a song to sort of promote the trip, and did you know, a bunch of different things, and I kind of probably very unhelpfully, but like helped out with a bunch of the work that the sort of onboard sort of campaigners and scientists were doing. But yeah, getting to swim in the deep sea was just really, I mean, it's like just unbelievable, you know, experience, knowing sort of the depth of the ocean beneath you and how kind of in the middle of absolute nowhere you are. I think at night time as well, you know, there being zero light pollution because we're in the middle of the ocean, seeing the kind of canopy of stars all around you, sort of
Wow.
reaching the ocean on every side was really beautiful. I felt so lucky to be there, and I think again, just getting to hear about the lives and experiences that led all the people on board to want to dedicate their lives to Greenpeace and to climate action, like, was just a load of really inspiring stories. And I'm super nosy, so I got to just ask people about their lives, and what life at sea is like, and you know, their experiences in protest and in disruption, and at sea, and you know, in the Arctic and the Antarctic and all of those things was really amazing for me.
Sounds so beautiful. And I love that. Yeah, there was also so much like exchange of knowledge and learning, and you know, hearing from activists. And I was just looking at some of the questions actually that the no music on a dead planet movement members have submitted. And there's one from Brittany. Oh, hold on. Yeah, you actually kind of answered some of this, but I think the last part would be like really interesting to hear from you. So Brittany said, "Hi Dan, I would like to know what your favorite memory is from your time with Greenpeace on the Sunrise. Also, how do you think learning about the Sargasso Sea and how to protect it has changed your perspective as an artist?"
Oh wow, that's a good, like, triple-pronged question. My favorite memory, I think I've kind of covered that already. Yeah, I mean, swimming in the ocean, seeing the whales breaching, hearing sort of dolphins swimming underneath, was amazing. Yeah, I think just the sense of awe in being right in the heart of things was really incredible, and I guess the isolation of it as well. I remember coming back to land, and I'm aware how ridiculous this sounds because we were only there for a week, but coming back to the island and getting you know, that back on land felt a bit disappointing. I guess there's something about it was kind of magical getting to be away, and I'm aware how cheesy that sounds, and I'm normally a little bit too cynical to be this earnest, but yeah, it was amazing. And then in terms of, yeah, I guess it was really inspiring. Like I said, chatting to that many campaigners and finding out the things they've done in their lives, big and small, sacrifices they've made, and trying to understand, as somebody who, like I said, is, like most people, interested and keen to help and concerned, but also, I guess we've got to understand everyone has distractions in their life going on, and all the other things that all the other daily challenges of life in all of its complexities. So yeah, I guess it was helpful for me to understand the things that are most useful on like a small level back home. Yeah.
Really, really cool. And we have another question from Francisca. He says, I so admire all the work you do as an artist and have always found the lyrics you write to hold such important messages. What inspired you to take this step beyond music and into activism work with Greenpeace?
Thank you. That's really lovely. Yeah, good question. I think we've sort of been speaking to Greenpeace for a while, and a lot of the campaigning and fundraising that I do for different organizations is something that I don't feel the need to do publicly. And so most of the work I do in that regard is something that I don't really talk about, or, and do a lot of it kind of anonymously. But because I think I'm boringly British and very, very cynical, and I think I was sort of tentative to do too much public activism because I guess I imagine the cynicism that I might think if I saw someone else doing it, or that might come back at me. But I had some, like I said before, I had some really brilliant. I mean, I just need to get over myself, which I think I hopefully have, or am trying to. But also like really interesting conversations about how much of that is just unhelpfully perpetuated to stop any conversations and to stop people from talking about it. And I think, it's amazing now to live in a time where loads of young artists are so vocal and really using their platform in such a brilliant way, because, these problems are real, and like, it's insane that things aren't happening on a bigger scale. It's so frustrating, but yeah, I think just really inspiring to see particularly younger people and younger artists who like won't take any bullshit around it and just like, so yeah, I think a lot of those conversations really helped me, and yeah, I think just trying to find ways to frame it like it in a positive way, and it's kind of like it is something that speaks to the concerns of most people. I think the sort of dissenting, denying voices are very, very small but very, very loud. I think that can kind of get in the way sometimes, when actually it's rare for people to not be like, obviously we want to be useful and try and find ways to be helpful. I'm not sure if that answered the question. I think I just rambled for ages.
I think it answered it pretty well. Yeah, it's also, I guess, so true that most people care. And I think it's really important that you mentioned that as well. And there's so much that can be tapped into there. I see Francisca actually answered in the chat and said it was a beautiful answer. So, and it also, there are two questions I think are really interesting, so would love to ask you. The first one is from Harvey, who said, will your experience change the way Bastille tour in the future? And the second one from Janine is, what was the most surprising aspect of being on the Arctic Sunrise? And I think you've touched a bit on that already, but if there's any more things that really surprised you being there?
Yeah, in terms of how we talk, I think we've always sort of tried. We've always done gone as over and abroad in terms of trying to like offset and be as green as we can when it comes to touring. It's difficult when it ultimately relies on travel. We're currently touring less, but also always looking for for ways, for sort of industry wide and us centric ways to kind of to be as green as possible. I think ultimately touring less is potentially the answer, and just trying to be as kind of thoughtful and mindful with how we tour, how we travel, all of that. What was the other question? Sorry, my brain is mush.
So right, the second question is from Janine is what was the most surprising aspect of being on the Arctic Sunrise, which you kind of touched on, but it'd be interesting to know if there was anything else that really like surprised you.
Yeah, sorry, Janine, for forgetting that. What surprised me? I think it's just we spend a lot of time touring on a tour bus, and I think there's a kind of perception that it's quite like a exciting, glamorous place to be. A tour bus is essentially 12 people in very, very close confines living on bunks above each other. So you're like, there's like 12 other people like snoring and farting and the rest, and like eating and going to the toilet. Like it's any job or situation where you're kind of living right on top of each other. It's interesting in that regard, particularly because it's generally 12 musicians. Take from that what you will. But for me, the sort of parallels with that and boat life were really interesting. You know, obviously on the boat is much more brutal. Like everything is hard metal, and the Arctic Sunrise, which is an incredible boat with an amazing history, but it's nicknamed the washing machine because most boats have a keel down the middle to stop them from doing this. With the Arctic Sunrise, it not only does that with the waves, but because it doesn't have a keel, it sort of does that as well. So the movement of the boat when the waves are bad and the weather's crazy, it's like that. We were kind of lucky. I didn't get that seasick. Other people got really seasick. I think that's just a kind of normal part of living in the ocean. At some point it comes for you. For some people worse than others. I was really lucky, but yeah, I think, you know, there's quite like a serious sort of safety and life on board presentation at the beginning, you know, because it's people are working and doing sort of serious jobs all the time around you, and you know, I was hyper aware of being like an idiot musician who'd come on board for a week. But you know, even stuff like you've always got to have a hand free to make sure you can catch something if the boat like turns heavily or flips. You know, there are lots and lots of rules, but also, yeah, I guess those kind of beautiful moments in and around it, like getting up to see the sunrise over the sort of infinite ocean horizon, and like I said, the sort of stars at night. Any kind of wildlife that we saw was always incredibly exciting, particularly given that everyone at Greenpeace obviously has such a massive love of nature and the oceans, and their knowledge is incredible as well. So that, like I said, the things they've seen, the stories they have, the activism they've done, you know, are really, really cool. And I think, you know, it definitely takes a certain type of person to want to give up their daily life and live on a boat, you know, working for Greenpeace. So that was really fascinating. Yeah, but boat life it's just quite nice to sort of muck in. I think because of tour, we're kind of used to I'm used to that slightly weird institutionalized living away thing. And yeah, like I said, the parallels were very similar. Getting up in the morning, cleaning the boat together, cooking together, eating together. A no phone zone in the kitchen and in the eating area was yeah, it was yeah. So I'm sorry, this isn't particularly articulate, but it was an amazing experience.
Sounds like, yeah, truly something that you will never forget. And this is also, I'm receiving some really great tips and information about boat life if I ever decide to do that big sail to Brazil. And there's two questions that kind of ask similar things. I'm going to join them together. As you've spoken a lot about also like the beauty of being out on the ocean and the wildlife and everything. So I'd also love to know the answer to this question. So Catalina from Brazil says, greetings from Brazil. The ocean is often described as having its own music, the waves, the wind, or the sounds of marine life. Your latest album, which is brilliant, by the way, is focused on different lives and stories. Given your recent experience at sea, would you ever consider creating an album inspired by lives in the ocean or nature? And there's also a question from Harvey, which asks a similar thing, which says, what was it like to be on the ocean for that length of time? Did it give you a different feeling, perspective on the world? And did it inspire new songs and lyrics? So I'm getting a general vibe of any new song, any new inspiration?
So the project that I've been working on and the album that just came out is called Ampersand, and the idea behind that was me using songwriting as a way to explore, for me, kind of fascinating pairs of people or pairs of ideas. So, there's one about like Bonnie and Clyde, for example, but there's also like Eve and Paradise Lost that's exploring like the unfairness of the fall of man from Eve's perspective. And like Marie Curie and her relationship with polonium, which she sort of discovered and named after the place she was from, even though it's illegal for her to study in Poland at the time because she was a woman. But, and this thing that she discovered that has changed so many lives and, led to radiotherapy and people in my life are still around because of that. But also it's a thing that killed her. So these sort of, I guess, for me, this album is like, it's not a history lesson. I wanted to make kind of beautiful songs, but it was a way for me to learn more about other lives, other people. There's a song about a Chinese pirate queen called Cheng Yi Sao, who was the most successful pirate ever, but most people don't know of her just because history is kind of, not given her the time that she deserves for many reasons. But yeah, so this is a big explanation, but yes, 100%. This project of mine is kind of ever expanding, and it's very collaborative, and lots of people have suggested stories. As part of the album, I've done this podcast called Muses with Emma, who's an academic, and she directed me towards lots of people from history and culture and science that I maybe hadn't heard of, who I wrote songs about. But every week in the podcast, we look at one of the songs and the lives of the person in it, but also she sets me more people and more work. So I'm kind of constantly writing for this, and I'm loving it so much, and finding that since we sort of stopped touring as much, I've got more space in my life and in my head to sort of be thinking about these people, reading about them. And definitely, someone gave me loads of amazing suggestions of cultural and historical figures from Brazil, for example, that I really want to look into, poets and writers and artists. And I think there's definitely space for kind of some amazing activist stories in there, because that's kind of the remit of just storytelling and trying to humanize amazing people from different kind of worlds and times and environments and stuff. So yeah, for sure. That's a very long and rambling answer, but I found it, since I started, almost like formalized in my mind that the way that I'm writing songs now is story songs about other people. I found it really liberating, and I find that the songs often end up being even more personal because I'm always looking for something in the lives of amazing people that is really emotionally resonant and relatable, because even the people that do the best things and have achieved the most incredible things are also obviously messy and complicated and have their sort of human foibles like we all do. So yes is the answer.
I love that. I think it's such a great way to help create a cultural shift as well, around, and spread more of these stories, like you said, of these figures, like historical, cultural, environmental figures. And I think we definitely need more of it. So I'll also be looking out for future stuff. And I think that is the last question we have time for. Thank you so much for.
Thank you. I encourage people to go to the Greenpeace UK website and sign this petition, because it's super easy, super quick, and I guess use whatever platforms you have if you want to kind of encourage other people to do the same. It's such a easily achievable, tangible thing, very quick, very easy, and it feels like such a no-brainer. Anyway, thank you so much for your questions, and to everyone for watching for your questions too.
Everyone definitely go and sign the petition afterwards. And thank you for chatting with me, Dan. That was a really great conversation. I loved hearing about your experience as well. So
I'm sorry that I rambled so much, but yeah, thanks for the question.
Fantastic. Thanks, both of you. It's been such a nice conversation to listen to. Dan, I think hearing about how you sort of know that there's charges of hypocrisy, but you're saying, look, I'm not perfect, I'm doing this anyway. It's really important to hear that, and really great to hear that you're brave enough to look that in the eye and say, I'm doing this anyway. It's
Yeah.
really, really
It's-
cool.
because I think that like as a musician, as someone who's like privileged enough to have traveled and toured the world, I'm really aware that that's not the greenest thing in the world, and that there's going to be charges of hypocrisy at kind of anyone necessarily that steps out of their lane or out of the expected thing they're doing and says the stuff, because that's the easy thing to do. You know, we know from the internet and all living on the internet, it's so easy to shut someone down or shut them up for saying anything. But I think the thing that like I came back to is like the vast majority of people are worried and want to be proactive and want to help, and we're all aware of our flaws and our hypocrisies, and that shouldn't be a big enough block, and I think it can be, and it's why it's used to paralyze people. But yeah, so yeah.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Thank you, Faye and Ella, for everything you do in Music Declares Emergency. I think it's such a great organisation and a pleasure to be involved in a tiny way. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks so much. And thanks so much, Domi, as well. We hope you have an amazing boat adventure or ship adventure, hopefully,
Great
to
time.
COP30. I guess that's in Brazil. But yeah, thank you both so much for taking part, and thank you so much everyone for attending. You can access it's an open letter that you can sign that we're sending out via No Music on a Dead Planet. So I think everyone here should be signed up, but otherwise it's nomusiconadeadplanet.org, and you'll get in your inbox, you'll find that letter. So that will come straight to you. And yeah, please do continue to get involved with what we do, and yeah, join with us to make a better planet and a better future for everyone.
Ah, amazing. Thank you so much, everyone. Remember, perfectionism is a myth.
Yeah.
Closing words.
Definitely.
And thank you for your amazing questions.
Yeah.
And Ella and Faye.
Thanks, Dobby. Thanks, Dan.
Have a good evening. Take care.
Take care.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Record